Hi, this is Andre Koen. I want to say welcome to another conversation. And today we're going to talk a little bit about this. Uh, uh, so I've gotten some things in my inbox, and people say, you know what? I can't say anything. I can't say anything, and I'm always being checked on what I say, and I just can't communicate. and so I want to let you off the hook a little bit and recognize that, or help you to recognize that we're all kind of in this spot, right? As we learn more, as we comprehend more, as we have more resources, we have to rise to those occasions, which means that the way we used to talk about folks, the jokes that we used to tell, the things. Okay, let me just put it this way. Do you all remember, or are you, folks been in environments where people could smoke inside places, indoors? Um, because I have, and now when I go to places, and different states have different ways of dealing with that. It is just so odd to see someone smoking inside. Right, and I'm not making a judgment about smoking. It's just interesting that behavior has changed. I think it's interesting that people recycle. When I was a kid, people would talk about recycling, and that was only for, and no offense, the hippies, right? But now it's a mainstream of what we do. And so as we think about this notion of working together, it does require us to think and act differently. And so, it's really not about this notion of political correctness, right? So political correctness says that if I have some, if I make there are stakes. There are things that are at stake, and the stakes are high. I could lose my job. I could do all these things, and this is something that someone is forcing upon me. They're infringing on my right to say whatever I want to say. It's my First Amendment right, and no, that's not what having a common language, being able to communicate in a civil way. That's not what that's about. It's not about political correctness. But if you want to use political correctness and that helps you change your behavior so you can reach your goals, go for it, right? But the intention is not for political correctness. So what is the key motivator for having to check my language to think about things differently? It really comes down to communication. So what is the point of communication? So all communication should have a point, right? It should have a goal. It should have some focus for engaging. Right. So I give gifts to people so I can show them that I appreciate them, in the hopes that that draws them closer to me. Right. So I give a gift, and hopefully that solidifies or increases our bond. Right. My respect for them is demonstrated. Our bond grows. So the same can be said with communication. Communication must have a goal, or trying to accomplish something. And so for most of us, it is actually trying to get the image in our head across to another person as clearly and as efficiently as possible. All right. So the ideas that are in my head, I want to share with someone else as succinctly and as efficiently as possible. So, if I were to say the word apple, many of us would get an image very similar to this. There are variations. Some people might see a computer. Some people might see a bite. But when I say apple, this is kind of a universal, particularly if you're it's a universal concept, no matter what the language. So if you said apple in other languages, you would get a similar iconography, right? And so this becomes kind of the archetype. And so when I say apple, no matter what language I use, this is the quintessential image that typically comes up. And so if I were to say rotten apple in any particular language, I would not get this image, right? Folks would not get this. So if I said it in Spanish, if I said it in Mandarin, the image would not be the same as this particular apple. And so when we think about this notion of communication, it really is about how do we effectively communicate, right? So if I grew up in an environment where I refer to African Americans or Black people or Africans Americans of African descent as colored, right? That is not my fault that I grew up in that environment and that everybody called them that. That's not my fault. However, when I come to the age of accountability, it becomes my responsibility to recognize what is required of the context that I'm in and the time frame that I'm in, right? And so one of the things we have to recognize is it's not about having good language or bad language. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about being effective. So what is the goal of your communication? And so if your communication is to create strong goal is to create stronger bonds, then there's a certain kind of way you want to talk to folks. If you want to increase effectiveness of your team or people that you work with, then there's a certain kind of language that you want to engage in. If your goal is to shun people and to block them and to stunt their growth, then that also has a certain kind of language attached to it. And so when we think about this notion of language, we should be thinking about it in terms of what is effective language, and ultimately the converse, which is what is ineffective language. And ineffective language is language that may be comfortable for you, but that is not geared to address the context that you're in. Well, growing up, we always called these people that, or we always said this. That may in fact be good for you, and it may in fact be true that that's how you were raised. But the question is that effective, right? So for a long time, I used, but I used to hear things in the community about other groups, that Jews were a particular kind of way, or that blacks were a certain kind of way, or that those Mexicans are da da da. And it actually started slipping even into everyday language, not intending any harm or doing anything, but like this notion of they've gypped me, right? That's a harmful language, right? And it may be benign. You may not have meant anything by it, but once you get the information, then you are accountable to change your behavior so that we can create inclusive environments, right? So those are some important things to recognize. The last thing I just want to say is when we think about this notion of having effective communication, just thinking about that allows us to second guess. And when we hear feedback about our communication style, we can ask ourselves, is that effective? Is that inclusive? Does that allow me to not only express what I'm trying to express, but does it do it efficiently, and does it do it effectively? Am I drawing people to me through my communication choice of words or my communication style, or am I repelling them? Am I being effective or am I being ineffective? My name is Andre Koen. I want to say thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing who we become as we continue these conversations. All right, till next time.